the process, and more. Piece of cake. For a quick view of what is going on in and around Sugar Land, scroll down to the What's Happening section of the home screen. Here we have recent news, a featured video, and even a calendar of upcoming events to help keep you informed. There is a lot left to explore on Sugar Land's website, but now you can see how you can find useful information with a sleek new design with just a few clicks
On the web.
Your extension request, commercial final of State Highway 6 and Imperial Boulevard, and it consists of the hatched area here. So this PD was approved back in July of 2017, and it authorized 6 commercial reserves, including a reserve for a hotel as well as a reserve for a proposed restaurant at that time. The extension request does require action from the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as City Council in order for it to be granted. So this is the approved site plan layout that was approved 2 years ago. So again, State Highway 6, Imperial Boulevard, and it has a primary access easement that goes through the property, and we have 6 reserves. Reserve B was the, or is the proposed reserve for a hotel. I don't believe that there's any hotels proposals yet. And then Reserve G was the proposed restaurant at that time. I believe that request is no longer applicable. And then this is the rest of the property. So again, just the approved hotel site layout. It went into detail on how the hotel was to be oriented with the amenity, pedestrian connection, and all those details. And then we also had an approved exhibit for the hotel design characteristics that any proposed hotel should have. With that, we recommend approval of the 2-year extension for the previously approved PD, ordinance number 2100, to the mayor and city council. And the applicant is here for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Myra or the applicant? Go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. I just have a couple of questions. I realize that we're limited to recommending approval or denial for an extension only and not a review of the PD. So my question would be, why are we renewing and what took so long to build? And do you have a time period that you expect to build out?
I can provide a brief explanation, and then I'll have Jerry Oki continue. So the initial driver for this PD was a restaurant, and I believe that kind of fell through after it was approved. And I know they have been getting inquiries about new land uses in there, but I don't think that they have anything finalized in the pipeline. But I'll let Jerry Oki continue.
Thank you.
Explain.
Thank you. I'm Jerry Olkey, the Vice President and General Manager for Johnson Development on the Imperial Project. And as Myra explained, at the time we were pushing this, we did have a restaurant that was very unique in its design that was included on this track. And unfortunately, as soon as we obtained the final development plan, they withdrew from closing on the property. We also had a hotel that we were trying to work with that was a select service, not a full service, but at the same time, there were 2 flags, one of which we kind of reflected as a generic land plan of what that would lay out and work with. That was the primary one. Unfortunately, neither one of those came to the closing table. We continue to work to try to fill in the adjacent tracks that are under the current approved uses. But we've had several LOIs that come, some continue. We just haven't gotten to a final plan for some of those that we can get to the closing table. So we're asking for an extension. At this point, we don't have a specific restaurant user for the one track that is very detailed. And I realize that at the point when we do have either a restaurant or another user that is interested in that one piece, we'll be coming back with an amendment for that one particular piece, because it was very unique in the way it was presented to that one user.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Suzanne? No? Anybody else on this side?
I would like to add a little bit to that. So if the restaurant comes in and is somewhat similar, then it could still go through with the approved elevation and site plan. If it's a little different, then we do have the ability to do a administrative PD. And so if it meets those requirements, then it can be approved by the director. But if it's totally different, then it will definitely come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a full PD amendment.
At what point does it meet the threshold of being different or substantially similar?
So the exhibit provided design characteristics that it needed to include. And so if it's different than that, then we'll definitely either, depending on how different, it will either be an administrative amendment or, again, we'll come back to the commission for a full review.
But you're saying depending on how different, and my question is, what is the metric for determining how different it needs to be before it comes back?
Let me just say this. I don't think there's any question, anybody that's had any barbecue in this town knows what this is. And so if it's not Spring Creek Barbecue, I think you got to come back for an amendment.
I want to hear what Doug has to say as far as the metric.
As far as that goes, if there are, since we can't enshrine brands anyway, if there are some changes to the elevation that's within the criteria already within the PD, there were 8 or 10 different shaping criteria. Some of the things on the site plan we talked about that were the most important, I say site plan, that layout plan Meyer was talking about was orientation of service areas, things like that. Those are the things that, if those change, we would need to come back for amendment. But there's quite a bit of ability for director approval of PD amendments. So if they have a different elevation, but it's essentially near the same and the same materials and the shaping criteria, we wouldn't bring that back just for an elevation change to the commission.
Okay.
So.
Carl?
The hotel, you've been fairly specific also, Jerry, with this plan. And would that qualify the same, I guess, is that going to require some kind of?
Administrative.
Same
We'd have
thing
to
as
look at
this,
that too, and I don't want to sound evasive in any way on that, but
No, I
it kind of is one of those things where you kind of have to actually really take a look at it and see, here are the criteria in the PD as a whole, here's the development code, how different would this be? I know one of the biggest things that the commission talked about was, let's make sure we get this height nailed down from thinking back in 17 when we worked on that. Wanted a very specific max on the height, wanted to make sure that we had a very clear picture of overall footprint and things like that too, so.
I'm not looking for a whole nother amendment for us to have to
Right.
do. I'm just trying to understand how far you can go, because Jerry,
Right.
2 years have passed and he hadn't done anything, so we don't want to hold him up anymore,
But we definitely, no, and I just want to make sure, kind of explain for everybody's benefit that there were several key things with both the hotel and but also a restaurant site had to do with a lot of shaping criteria. So we really have to look at any different proposal, see how different, and if it warrants it, we certainly we'll be back on that.
My recommendation to you, Jerry, in the future, if you got a PD, and I don't care if it is Spring Creek or XYZ, don't put their deal in here, just say restaurant.
I would love to do that. Because trying to find one that looked just like that.
Yeah, it can be tricky.
You might
Okay,
get sued.
yeah, and I would hope that as far as a hotel goes, if it would at least meet the criteria here, if there was less, that it would come back, if it was less in any way, and that it wouldn't be administratively passed through. Then you're indicating yes. Okay. Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I have a question. Look, I don't have any real opposition to this, so this question is more for informational purposes than putting you through your paces or anything like that. But here's my question. If I'm and I think I understand the scope of what we're to vote on and just whether or not the extension of time is warranted, so I get that. But given the fact that you've made some comments about the development plan itself, I'm hearing that there was some custom development essentially for the restaurant and also for the hotel, and I understand, you're going to try to fill those as it's been approved, but help me to understand what would be the difference of, it sounds to me like there's some possibility that you could deal with this changes administratively, or you may have to come back and ask for something new. So help me to understand why it's important that this PD be extended for another 2-year period versus coming back and getting another one approved based on the interest that you're getting from potential tenants.
Because there's 4 other pieces of that 6-piece puzzle that are not extremely detailed that I could go ahead and begin to work under as long as I meet the criteria that's in the PD. It doesn't have the very specific elevations. So as long as I meet the criteria that's through there, I have 4 tracks I can move on without having the 4 to 6, maybe 8-month process of going through all those details of a full final development plan redo, or amend, well, more than an amendment, but a redo. If this expires, then I have the full process to go through, as opposed to 4 tracks that as long as I meet those criteria, I can sell those without coming through that process and then move into a building permit and construction. A lot of the problems, not problems, just obstacles that we deal with are that the timeline, many of these commercial buyers, they're in the mindset of 24 months. So we're going to go find a piece of land, and we're going to negotiate on it, and we're going to buy it, and then we're going to take 15 months to build it, and then we're going to occupy it, and we're going to start making money. The process sometimes doesn't lend itself because of the adjacent, the hotel or something of that nature. So when we start creeping beyond their window of we want to occupy them, they start pulling out. And it's an education process that we're dealing with, and we've got them, but still, many of them don't want to wait that long. They don't have that vision that far out there. They're looking in the near future. How fast can I go? Okay, this is not the spot for you. And so we continue to work with that as we move down the line. And that's why for this one, those extra 4 pieces that don't have that extra step ahead of them, if I have somebody that wants that particular one, then I'm here and moving forward with that on an amendment.
And has there been any effort in the last 2 years to fill those 4 spaces?
A continued effort. Like, as I mentioned, it's just getting those users that are there and their financial backers to meet the thresholds and close on the property.
But you feel like there's some it'd be fruitful to extend that, and
There's plenty of interest. Some of it is our architectural requirements because of the PD that we want as the Imperial brand, the setbacks. Some that I run up against are the question of, well, what is my competition on Imperial Market, which is a whole nother issue that I can't answer. I don't own the Imperial Market, we sold that, but they ask us, what is that? I don't have an answer for you. Check their website, call them, but they're like, well, we want to wait. I don't want to wait. I would like to sell you the land now. But I can understand their concerns, and that's part of some of these contracts that don't go to closing table.
okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
But Matt, you should never ask a developer if he does not want to sell.
I'll sell that tomorrow.
Right? Or if any effort's been made to. Okay, anybody over here have any questions? Carl, you're good?
I told Jerry what I was going to ask before I got here.
Okay. So with that, I will call for a motion. Okay, thank you, Jay. Seconded by Taylor. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay. I think we can vote now.
There it is.
Yay. Look at you. Okay, it passes unanimously. You bet. Thank you, Jerry. Item 5, reports. 5A, Planning and Zoning Commission Liaison Report to the May meetings, 7th, 14th, and 21st.
I think that was me.
Okay.
Thanks for trading months. Appreciate that. So I had the pleasure to attend the last 3 city council meetings. So we'll go through these, and starting with the May 7th meeting, which was the meeting where it rained like crazy. I think Suzanne and I were trying to figure out the name for that storm, but it was a little bit of a disjointed meeting. But they basically recognized the Dulles Academic Decathlon team, recognized the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. The real meat of the actual things they voted on were 3 professional services contracts, one for a risk assessment vendor, another one was for a professional services contract for wastewater collection, and then the third one was for a KPMG groundwater plants assessment project. So all 3 of those passed unanimously. They took a pause because it started to rain and they had to kind of batten down the hatchets and make sure everybody was safe and secure. And so the meeting ended in between there. They took a break, and that was pretty much the meat of what they voted on the 7th. The May 14th special meeting was basically to swear in Councilman Stuart Jacobson for District 3. They also ratified the results of the election that happened previously and announced the dates for the City Council District 2 runoff, which is happening on June 8th. So they basically outlined the process and the voting dates for that and where the early voting would happen and the actual election date. So that was, they also administered oaths for the city council officials who were elected. So Steve Porter, Carol McCutcheon, as well as Stuart Jacobson, like I mentioned. And then this week's meeting was an amazing one. They had quite a few recognitions. So Glenda Gunderman, the city secretary, they recognized her 35 years of service. So a lot of dignitaries were here. Former Mayor Jimmy Thompson was in attendance. They also recognized that it was Public Works Week, and also recognized National EMS Week. So we had a lot of first responders and police officers who were recognized, and so it was an amazing show of force, so to speak. They also announced that there's going to be the 4th of July event is coming back to Town Center. So they announced that Gary Becker's development team, Ghost Entertainment, is going to be providing kind of the sponsorship for those services, and basically it's going to be a free event with tickets provided to the city residents. And majority of the discussion was around just the logistics and making sure that people with tickets were able to get in, and that you just couldn't just show up and kind of sit and watch the festivities. So they voted on that. That passed unanimously. There was one interesting thing, I think, for us, kind of applicable to us in the sense that there was an ordinance considered for a reinvestment zone in the Sugar Land Business Park. So it's adjacent to Gillingham Lane in the West Airport area where the Sugar Land Business Park is. They discussed and passed an ordinance to create a reinvestment zone in that area. So that was somewhat interesting. So Johnson Development's also going to be the ones carrying that out as well. So it's about an $11.6 million investment that they're going to make into that area as a reinvestment zone. And then the last thing from that meeting was the resolution to authorize 6 financial institutions to help invest the city's money into very low risk, low yield, conservative investments. So they announced 6 banks or financial services institutions would be taking that on and kind of carrying forward. So there was some discussion about why 6, why not like 8, why not 9? So they discussed that in a little bit of detail, ended up passing that unanimously, but that was the only other thing of note, other than, just the regular city council reports and so forth. So, yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Item B, city staff report.
Just a quick preview of your next meeting, the June 11th meeting. There's going to be a public hearing that evening and review of some updates to the city's master thoroughfare plan. And that was last formally adopted in 2012. A lot of this is more just graphic updates. Of course, New Territory and Greatwood are now in the city. Decisions largely that have already been made, but engineering will be bringing that forward along with long-range planning. And then the other item is anticipated the capital improvements program, the annual CIP review that engineering will be reviewing with the PNC. That's all we have.
Okay, thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, Matt made the motion, seconded by Carl. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we're now adjourned.